I'm Dr. Ann Gillies, and I'm a Canadian retired trauma therapist. I spent several years, well, many years actually, treating adult survivors of childhood sexual abuse. But the reason that I do what I do now is very personal to me. Being married to a man who was having homosexual affairs throughout our marriage. And the final straw came when he came home one night and said that he had met someone new, he loved him and he loved me too, and he wanted us both. And finally the light came on for me and I went, this is just ridiculous. And I'd only stayed in the marriage because we had 3 young children. And I thought that was the right thing to do. Well, I found out later that it just was absolutely the wrong thing to do, because what I found out 3 years later after I had remarried, and just 2 months into the second marriage, my son, one of my sons, told me that his father had sexually abused him. Not only my ex-husband, but his boyfriends. I went back to school and I thought I need to find out how I can help my children. I wanted to learn about trauma. And I started to write about trauma first. That was my first book on how to treat trauma. And then the next book I wrote was Closing the Floodgates, Setting the Record Straight on Gender and Sexuality. And that then kind of spiraled into what I do now. It became important for me to tell people. My first interest, because I'm a Christian, was to go to the Canadian churches. I was very disappointed because they really didn't want to hear what I had to say. They were very afraid, very frightened, and so when I spoke, they just said, well, what do you want us to do about it? And I was like, you have to tell your people, you have to tell people that this is happening in our education system and that there is a very devious agenda to really indoctrinate. So this was in 2017, and we've seen that kind of indoctrination just absolutely get ramped up in such a tremendous way in Canada. When Gender Wars in Canada came out, and I watched it, and I'm like, oh, this is so important. Parents need to see this. Educators need to see this. Politicians need to see this, because this is truth, and we're not really allowed to talk about this openly in Canada, not at this level. So it's exciting to see, and it's still up on YouTube.
So they're teaching the children that a dog can be a cat. Well, a dog can't be a cat. But that leads back to, I'm a little boy, I can be a little girl. You know, we look at the pride flag. It's about sex. It's about somebody's sexual preference. Why do we have that in the schools?
I've had lots of positive reflections about it.
I was born a girl is a powerful statement, and it's a powerful truth that I'm learning to live in.
Kelly was just amazing. I'm just so impressed by her bravery. And her story, you see, is very similar to my children's story, and so it really touched my heart. And you see, there's an underlying theme for these children that we must be aware of. So I thought it was a tremendous work and a real advance, you know, into this area so that people can become educated. Emily, when she talked about her activism and the threats that come at a young mom with young children, just because she wants to speak truth, and she's threatened. Her children are threatened. And that's the condition in Canada. There's just so many good parts to this documentary. Even pre-kindergarten children are learning about, well, they're being told that they may not be a boy or a girl, whatever their sex is. They may be the opposite gender, we call it. I prefer to call it sexual confusion. And so Teachers and educators, and not all teachers, there's some really good ones, but many young teachers that are coming into the education system now have been also indoctrinated in this whole ideology of queer theory. And so the reality is that they think it's normal to talk about these things to young children, and it is extremely confusing. I think we need to do everything we can to stop this. And that's what I'm committed to. So we have some hope, but it will mean a change of government before we can see this actually stopped in our schools. And how far we can get, I don't know. But we need to let children be children. Walk cautiously and live courageously. Take back the education. We need to stand as one for our young.